Nobody on the planet has ever been happy in any moment other than the present. Don't take my word for it. Just meditate on what has happened for you, or what's happening for you when you're in moments that you would call peak experience, or as our Mohawk friend said, being in the zone. What is happening in that moment? The problem is no one's ever been high in any phase of time but the present. The mind can't be present. That's the problem. That's the problem. Does that mean the mind sucks? No, it has a useful tool. It helps us do our bills, get across the street, plan yoga classes, plan dinner. But we call it addiction of thinking because when it's time to put the baby to bed, it keeps going for most people. And this is why there's suffering in the world, because it creates a feeling of alienation from one's own self, and therefore alienation from others. Think about it this way. In the waking hours that you are alive, 90-something% of the time, most people are in the past or future, the only place where they will not experience what they're looking for. The goal of yoga is to engage practices, then, that take us into a deeper space of awareness at will that eventually, or even suddenly, depending on where you're at, unveils the source light of the self. Thought in and of itself is not a problem. It's what we do with it. What do we do with what flows past the screen of our awareness? Do we grasp at every emotion that we feel, every thought that we think, or even worse, push them away? Or do we ground our awareness elsewhere, which is to say, in a deeper state of consciousness that is afforded to us or given to us by the state or the practice of yoga? So when we talk about the practice of yoga, we're talking about the practices that open the door to the state of yoga. Practices, in other words, that open us to the possibility of experiencing the state of high that until now, for a lot of us, only comes unconsciously. Nobody plans their own high exactly, right? We plan the date, we plan the vacation, but we don't say, yeah, I think on the third night of my camping trip, at dusk, I'll have an awakening experience. And yet we go camping to have an awakening experience. There's no other reason to do anything than to have an awakening experience. The seeming inability to disengage from the flow of thoughts and emotion. The seeming inability, the illusory inability to disengage at will from the flow of thoughts and emotions. Disengage, again, doesn't mean suppression. When you suppress what you're feeling, of course, it comes back with a vengeance. This is called samskara, and we're going to talk about that tomorrow. But what we're doing now is recognizing what is the state of yoga. The state of yoga is known to us, and it's known to us with one quality that's universal. It is a state in which the mind, which pulls us in two directions all the time, becomes quiet, or at least becomes backgrounded to something arising within you. A state of release. When we look at aphorism 1.3, tada drashtuhu swarupe avastanam, then, when you're in the state of yoga, that inner self, that inner witness, as he calls it, literally the inner seer, the one who sees and observes, your source awareness, is revealed or stands in its own true form, its own true nature. Just as when we look into a pond on a windy day, we see nothing but thought waves coming and going, breaking up the image of the self. And when we look at that, we tend not to want to look at it anymore. Instead, we engage the waves. What am I thinking? Analyzing thoughts. This, of course, is a Pandora's box. The more we feed energy into trying to cure ourselves of what we're going through with the very mind that has stirred up the pot to begin with, it's like Pandora's box. But when we allow ourselves to calm the breath, the pond, you might say, becomes still, and we see the inner witness reflecting back. And this is the witness of the true self. The self which is the source of all of our highs,